Welcome to the Copyright Alliance's World IP Day 2022 panel titled Copyright in Youth, Creating a Better Future. This year's panel discussion is based on the 2022 theme, IP in Youth, Innovating for a Better Future, which was selected by the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. Today, with the help of our terrific panelists, we're going to address a number of important questions relating to copyright and creativity, and what both of these mean to the youth of today. During our panel discussion, we hope to cover such important issues as how do we ensure that the bright, curious, and talented young minds of today are transformed into tomorrow's musicians, artists, writers, actors, photographers, video game designers, and many other types of creators and innovators. How to provide real-world examples and education for students to model and learn from as they become career-minded creative professionals themselves. And what do creators and innovators know about protecting their works through copyright and other forms of IP, and who, if anyone, is teaching them? So let me start today's panel by introducing myself. I'm Keith Cooper-Schmidt, the CEO of the Copyright Alliance, and I'll be moderating today's panel. I'm pleased to introduce our panelists and ask them to introduce themselves. It only seems appropriate to kick things off with Kik Lee. So Kik is the founder and director of the Cincinnati Music Accelerator. Kik, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also the Cincinnati Music Accelerator?
Thank you, Keith. Happy to be here. I am Kik Lee. I'm, of course, founder and executive director of the Cincinnati Music Accelerator. We are a career accelerator in music that focuses on the development of music creatives and enhancing their ability to succeed within the music arts. I am a music producer and composer. I work within the sync licensing space, so licensing music and composing jingles for various brands around the world. And I've been doing that for about 17 plus years. So something I really enjoy. And again, I'm happy to be here, be on this panel.
All right, and we're happy to have you as well, Kik, especially since we get to see your collection behind you a little bit there. Next is Addie Clark. Addie is a recent graduate of Davidson College in North Carolina and is now embarking on a career in the arts. Addie, it's very nice to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about what type of artist you are and what stage of your career you're in?
Yeah, thanks so much. Happy to be here. I just graduated a second ago at Davidson, and I majored in studio arts, minored in communications. This is behind me, some of my art. It's multimedia between photography, paint, drawing, digital, anything I can really get my hands on. And I'm now figuring out what a career as an artist looks like, or what a career maybe teaching and an artist looks like. So just very new, not much of my family was an artist, so been sorting it out bit by bit. But thank you so much for having me.
All right, and thank you for being here. And if there's a career in Zoom backgrounds, I don't know if there are, you definitely would win the award. That's fantastic background you got there.
Chicago.
Next up is Janet Hicks. Janet is Vice President and Director of Licensing at the Artist Rights Society, ARS. Janet, can you let our viewers know who is ARS and what does ARS do?
Sure, thanks Keith, and thanks to everyone for having me on the panel. Artist Rights Society represents about 120,000 visual artists, painters, sculptors, photographers, and illustrators for their intellectual property rights. And we do management of those rights, whether it be contract negotiations, licensing deals, infringements of unauthorized uses. And we run the gamut from representing artists who are really well known and established, maybe estates or foundations, to up and coming artists who may have their first copyright deal and not really know how to handle a contract. So we tend to do it all for all of our members.
Very interesting. All right, next up is Kim Tignor. Kim is the Executive Director of the Institute for Intellectual Property and Social Justice. And she's also the founder of Take Creative Control Program. Kim, welcome to our panel. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and also what you do.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. We work to ensure that creators of color are able to share, protect, and monetize their creative works. I have a really strong background in the civil rights community. And, one of the wonderful things underneath my economic justice portfolio was my intellectual property portfolio. And increasingly, I was seeing that, ensuring that our creators are able to thrive in this economy, it is the economic justice issue of now. And so, I then joined the Institute for Intellectual Property Social Justice and founded Take Creative Control, where we literally go into creative communities and do really intentional outreach to target marginalized creators, and ensure that they understand their intellectual property rights. They understand that their creative works are of value, not once someone is trying to steal it, not once it goes viral, but at its very inception. So I'm really grateful to be a part of this conversation today.
Kim, thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about Take Creative Control as well. It sounds very, very interesting. And so then last, but not certainly not least, we have David Sohn. David is the Director of Copyright and Creativity. David, can you please tell us about your background and also what your organization does?
Sure, thank you. Copyright and Creativity for Ethical Digital Citizens is the full name of the project, but we go by Copyright and Creativity, or even just CNC for short. We're a nonprofit project, and we've created a full suite of K-12 education resources that teachers can use to teach the basic copyright landscape to students. It's all available for free, and it's on our website, which is copyrightandcreativity.org. My personal background is in copyright policy, where there are lots of interesting and often contentious questions, but it's interesting. Education is more of a consensus space in this area, where I think everyone can agree that a lot of progress could be made if we could have better general awareness of the copyright landscape. So I'm happy to be in the education area.
All right, I look forward to talking to you more about that and hearing more about your programs. Thank you all for those were great introductions for our viewers. I want to, before we get to the questions, I wanted to point out one thing. I was asked to also highlight another great resource in addition to copyright and creativity called streamsafely.com. Streamsafely.com is a comprehensive resource for news and information about the risks associated with viewing pirated television, pirated film, and pirated sports content. So I encourage everyone to check that out as well. So let's get started with some of the questions for our panelists. Kik, let's start off with you. When it comes to educating young, aspiring musicians, the goals of CMA include helping participants hone their talents as well as to learn business skills, such as making a career. How important is it to do both of these things, like the hone their talents and also learn the business aspect?
Well, it's very important in general overall to, pretty much, of course, teach both aspects, but teaching the creators just how to merge the two. A lot of musicians and a lot of creatives, we work on our art, we focus on our art, but we get a bit discouraged because we don't quite understand how to monetize the art. So, we focus by teaching them just how to enhance and hone their artistic ability, but then also teach them how to monetize that through a business. A lot of them focus on trying to get funding and grants and support, and for them to really get to that kind of point to be able to receive or be, invited to get that kind of funding, they have to be, of course, to a degree, a registered entity, as well as it helps them at the end of the year when they're filing their taxes. So, like I said, we teach them various values of monetization, like, of course, business finance, marketing and branding, content creation, and entertainment law, as well as a few other workshops. And we create this type of pipeline to be able to say, this is how you need to start everything. This is where you start. This is where you've, kind of got to stop, figure it out. And then this is where you really begin to accelerate your career. So teaching that all together just helps them feel more empowered, feel more in control, feel more business professional and structured within their art and their creativity. And for us, this is huge because it not only helps them, it helps their ecosystem evolve as well. With more businesses comes more city support, more city funding. more cases are fought to say, hey, we have enough music creatives or creatives in general in our ecosystem. We need more federal dollars to help fund and fuel their businesses, just like a small business that's a small brewery or a restaurant. So we really try to help them just really understand themselves, as well as understand the business side and the structure of that. And it's, again, extremely important for this to be done.
Yeah, I can imagine because if not, they jump into the world and start, start their careers, and then they go, oops, wait a minute, I don't know this information, and they maybe find out the hard way, right? And so it's much easier to do that at the beginning of the process, if you will, and learn it hand in hand. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So Addie, this is a World IP Day is about young creators and young innovators, and so you're our designated young creator on the panel here. So you have the heavy burden of representing all creators here. Just kidding. But so just talk a little bit about yourself. What was the inspiration behind you wanting to become an artist at a young age? And then also, if you can touch upon how important copyright is to you in terms of protecting your artwork.
Thank you. I've more been fighting being an artist for, I think, longer, since I was little. I remember my mom saying something about thinking I would be an artist, and I remember distinctively being like, why would I do that? That's like a side thing. And slowly realizing that I definitely can't run from it, and it's just part of me. And so, yeah, I've been learning what that means to make it a career, and what that means to be not necessarily having like a full structure or a corporate structure to climb. It's just something that I was not used to growing up. A lot of my family was in business, and I think besides my grandma, no one really did art. So I've kind of just been figuring it out step by step. But copyright has been really important to me, especially coming out of school. And I graduated right in the middle of the pandemic. So digital art was really huge for me, and learning how to distribute and promote my own work. But I have minor attachment issues to my painting. So I really love digital art because I can print it and get it to more people and still be able to keep it and look at it. But so I started learning about copyright right at the end of senior year. And it really scared me before that. But once I started to look into it, it really wasn't anything crazy. And I'm so glad I did, because it feels like it gives more physicality to the work, more like it makes it more tangible in a way, where paintings are one of a kind. A lot of my prints, I'll print 5 times and then archive it, just to keep everything original and unique, which is what I love about art, and owning unique art. So yeah, I've kind of just always been an artist, but only now really rolling into it.
Yeah, now you're trying to start an actual career and earn a livelihood. And I guess that's exactly kind of, you were mentioning copyright at the very end of your education there as an important aspect, because without copyright, it's tough to have that career and tough to have that livelihood, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. So, all right, let's turn to David. David, you're, as I mentioned before, the director of this nonprofit or program that offers free K-12 classroom resources to teach students about copyright. Can you tell us how the program works? What type of resources and topics does the program cover? And anything else you think our audience might want to hear about the program?
Yeah, so really the premise behind our program is that everyone is a creator and a publisher today. We're all walking around with these devices in our pockets that are the equivalent of a printing press connected to a worldwide distribution network. And kids are interacting with all kinds of digital content in all kinds of ways. And so everybody really needs to know the basic ground rules around copyright. It's become kind of a basic life skill. It's just part of digital literacy in the age that we live in. But the challenge is that a lot of teachers may not feel prepared to teach it. It may seem like a complicated legal subject to them. Copyright does have a lot of gray areas. A lot of it isn't easy. So they need something that can help them do that. So what we've done is prepared really everything teachers would need to bring this into the classroom. Lesson plans, videos that walk through some of the complicated parts, slides, professional development if teachers want to go deeper themselves. Basically everything teachers would need to do it on a plug and play basis, and it's all available for free on our website. I guess the couple things I'd say about our approach in terms of making it work for students and making it relatable to them is, number one, we try to keep it positive. We try to avoid teaching copyright as just a bunch of rules of thou shalt nots, right? Don't do this, don't do that, don't be a pirate. We feel like if you go too heavy on that, you're really going to turn people off, and that the way to get them into this topic is to be positive. Talk about what copyright is for, why it exists, what role it plays, and also to understand that they themselves are creators and copyright can work for them, both now and things they may create as amateurs, and later if they ever want to have more of a professional creative career, how all of that is important. And then second, we try to be practical. So focusing really on how they can navigate copyright successfully to do the things they want to do, like access various kinds of content, share their enthusiasm for content that they find with others in a lawful way. And also when they're creating, sometimes you need to pull an image that someone else has done for an illustration for your blog post, or you might need a soundtrack for a video you're creating. So what are your options as a creator for legally incorporating some bits and pieces of work that other people may have done? How do you do that the right way? So we think if we address practically the kind of things that kids are actually trying to do with content, we can make this a subject that they find both useful and interesting.
That's hugely important to teach this and to teach it as you're suggesting in the schools. Kim, you also have a very important program. I told you I was going to come back to you and ask you about it because I think it's really interesting. It's called Take Creative Control Program. So can you tell us about that program, because you founded it, right? You run the program, and how it works to support young creators.
Yeah, I mean, so Take Creative Control is a creator-driven, creator-informed initiative. We do activations throughout the country where we authentically connect and partner with our creatives, with local creatives, and talk to them about the challenges that they're facing in their different fields. As you can imagine, every city kind of has its own flavor of creative community, and which is made just for some really amazing conversations as far as the different things that they're facing in trying to monetize and protect their work. So for example, when we have activations here in Washington, DC, it's very small business focused with music. Whereas when we had our activation in, say, Atlanta, we had a lot of folks coming out from the wellness community. There's a thriving tech community down there. And then you look at, for example, LA, where we had a number of singers, songwriters, playwrights, authors. It just looks different in different places. And it's just been a really fun way to look at the creative way in which creative people remain connected to their communities and build platforms. And so what we do is we go into these cities, we work with our creative brain trust to do programming, to shape the panels. We bring in policy experts, legal experts, to do these panels. We also, we do art exhibits. We have performers perform. We want to celebrate the creative. And then at the same time, we bring in a team of 20 to 30 intellectual property attorneys that do one-on-one legal sessions and just create the opportunity for our creatives to just have a one-off informal conversation about whatever it is that's on their mind. And for those that have a ripe issue that actually needs engagement, we then work with our network of amazing IP pro bono firms to help them get pro bono representation. So it has really been an amazing way for us to learn about new issues that are emerging, to think about policy issues, how to better shape policy solutions to actually help the creative entrepreneur. I mean, if you think about, COVID and what COVID taught us, which is, I think, the important role that the creative community, plays in our healing, in our mental health, in our, survival, the very special place that the creative community provided for us, in trying to navigate and survive the pandemic. I thought was just such a lesson to us about how important it is for us to continue to think about very intentional ways to support this community. And so it's been a real pleasure to learn from our partners, the different policy issues that they're dealing with, be it, issues with copyright or the digital divide. It's just so many different things that may not necessarily occur to our typical policy maker that are impacting them. And so we just want to be the bridge between those, between our creative community and the folks that are looking to solve these policy issues.
Yeah, one thing you said there really struck a nerve with me, especially, which is, you mentioned during the pandemic, what was happening and how important the arts and creativity is and was. And I know personally, right? I mean, I think for everyone, of course, we found out just how important it is when times get tough, how people lean on that, right? Lean on, music and movies and television and the arts and, video games also, all these types of creative works when time gets tough and they need a distraction from what's going on in the real world, if nothing more. And we found out just how important that was. So let me turn to Janet now, who's going to talk a little bit about the arts. You work a lot with these, forward-thinking artists, especially those who are younger. What do you think motivates them? What does your organization ARS do to help these young creators learn how to protect their works?
Well, I think artists like Addie are really drawn to new technologies, digital art, et cetera, and also on the platforms that distribute it, like social media. So already right there, we're talking about a whole new layer of complexity as far as the protection and monetization of those works, because young artists are naturally drawn to those newer technologies that may be a little harder to wrap your head around regarding protection. And also the themes tend to be sort of the kinds of themes that maybe are meant to be shared. A lot of younger artists are really focused on maybe environmental issues or injustice and really want to get their work out there. I mean, creators in general, not just younger creators, that's the impetus for making the work, is to share the work. So couple that with some digital technology, and you're looking at some difficulties in how to keep your work protected and to not travel further than what you intended to do. So at Artists' Rights Society, we're a membership organization. Membership is free, and we represent artists to make sure that if they are trying to get their work out there, that they do so in a responsible way. That they do so from a place of respecting their creativity and respecting their work, that they do try to get paid. Because we represent so many artists, we're able to give people, guidelines to say, like, look, we've done similar things like this. Artists do get paid for these sorts of things. If someone is telling you otherwise, maybe this is not the best contract for you to get involved with, and let's us step in to help you out on that. So putting a contract in place is the smartest thing to do, even if it's for a small amount of money, just to make sure that you are getting the work out how you want to, but also putting an end cap to that. So it's not going to be exploited in ways that you don't want to have happen.
Okay, great. Let me return to you now, Kik, and we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive. What do you think the most important element for young creators to know regarding protecting their works when they first begin their career in music? So I'll just ask you to just limit it to music. So what's the most important element that they think they need to know in terms of protecting their works?
The most important element, I feel like they should know is just how to protect their work, just in general. Where do you go and how does that operate, as well as also knowing that there is help out there and there are people genuinely who just wanting to help you understand how to protect your works. An example being during the pandemic, the platform Clubhouse became very popular, and literally you could join almost any room and learn about almost everything under the sun for free from the most insane, amazing individuals that you couldn't reach. You couldn't even touch them now, but you're there and you can listen to them. So like I say, that element of just knowing that you can protect that and just knowing where to go, how it operates, and knowing that there are individuals out there, you know, again, to be honest, I'm probably just saying there's a bunch of elements. There's no real one for me that says this is the main element. It's just knowing that there are elements in general to be able to help you protect your content, you know, just like individuals like Janet going out there and just saying, hey, we want to teach you just how this operates. We want to help you understand this is yours. Know that, believe that, and understand that. And I am here to help you for free.
All right. So Janet, what about you? I mean, I just asked the question in regard to music, but what do you think the most important element is for these young creators to know about protecting their works when it comes to the arts?
Sure. I mean, maybe I get this more often than I think maybe other disciplines do. I work a lot in TV and film, and I will often get a request to use artwork in the background of a TV show or a film for the exposure, where I don't think that they would be asking an actor to work for free or a musician's song to be used for free or any other sorts of discipline. But for some reason, I feel like the visual arts are often put into that category of, you know, you should be grateful that your work will be seen and exposed. So I think the biggest lesson is to, again, know that you have value in your work. And, you know, if you feel like you have to give it for a reduced rate, you could do so, but do so in the right way. And know that sometime down the line, you're probably going to be in a position to collect a lot more for it.
Yeah, what you just said there reminded me of a story. I was in my early days of my career listening to a hearing, and I can't remember who was testifying. I want to say it was somebody from BMI at the time, but I could be wrong, who explained that, you know, when you get served dinner, you get the little garnish of parsley right on the thing. But nobody goes to the parsley growers and said, well, this is just a garnish. I shouldn't have to pay for it. Just give it to me for free. That doesn't happen. So why would the same thing happen for, you know, whether it's art or music or any other type of creative work? Why, you know, just for the exposure? Yeah, it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, and the point you make is a very, very good one. So,
and just to put a contract in place and to ask for payment is just makes you a good steward of your copyright, and in general just makes you a better business person. And if you're in the business of doing art, that should be part of the foundations of how you are a good business person.
Yeah, that's a terrific point. Kim, maybe you can talk generally about the importance of education or educating youths about copyright and intellectual property and ways to reach and connect with them on these topics.
I mean, I think that one thing that really resonated with me that Kik was saying earlier is that creatives are so collaborative. And I just think that, you know, reaching out to them and making sure that they understand that understanding the business of being a creative, understanding the business of controlling your intellectual property, it makes you a better collaborative, like or collaborator. You know, you are a much better person it's much easier to work with others and to collaborate with others when you understand what you do and you do not own. And I just have found that to be such a powerful way to kind of open the conversation of, no, this is actually to help you enhance your creativity. It's not to be a burden or an impediment.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm in the middle of reading a book about my favorite band, about how they lost their lead singer because of that, right? I mean, a lot of bands and others break up because they don't know what they own and what they don't own, and that affects the collaboration eventually as well.
I want to speak on that a little more too.
Yeah, go ahead, Kik.
Because that's really a big reason of why, part of why I started the Music Accelerator in general was when I got more deep into my career in sync licensing and tried to collaborate with local musicians in my region, it always went south because they just did not understand what I was articulating to them when it came to split sheets, contracts, payouts, just how that worked. They didn't understand, you know, the back end, like there's a back end. They always heard the term, well, I'll take care of you on the back end, but they didn't actually understand what that meant. So once we started this organization and our programming, they started to understand, like, that's what this means. Okay. And because they understand what it meant, they felt more safe and sound saying, I get it. Yes, let's collaborate. Let's work together. So I just had to touch on that because that's a passionate subject to my heart and why I do what I do with the Music Accelerator.
Oh, that's really good to know. Obviously, we hit a nerve there, so appreciate you jumping in. Along those lines about kind of what you know, or what people know and what they don't know. I'm going to start with Addie, but then anyone can jump in afterwards. Addie, is there one aspect of copyright you think that young creators or users, for that matter, of copyrighted work struggle to understand more than others?
I think just the field in general is so lofty in a way, like it just feels so far off. And sorry, my dog's here, but I remember being scared of it in a way, and almost because while you're in school, you're protected. Most of as long as you're not selling it, a lot of it's protected. And I felt almost safer to not look up anything. But I remember like just Google searching and looking into it. It's really not as complicated as it seems. It's just such a new field, and we're not taught a lot about it in school, honestly. And it's just so important. And I feel like it honestly allowed me, the more I learned, the more freedom I had, because it gave me more and more ideas to learn what I could do, like what David was saying, versus what I can't do, but you can do this and you can do this. But I remember I think the legalities of it really scare me, and forms and paperwork are already typically not an artist's best friend. So anything with a big white paper with a ton of little tiny black words on it, I probably run from more often than run to. So, but because it's such a big field for artists now, there's so many resources and translations into more things that are not just big white pieces of paper with tiny little black words on them. Like what Kick was saying, there's so many people to help, and everybody there's just so many resources and so many people that want to educate and help understand.
Anyone else want to jump in on an aspect of copyright you think that young creators or young users don't really understand, maybe more than other copyrighted?
I'll jump in on that. I mean, our perspective is maybe a little bit different because we're catering to a school age audience that they haven't made any professional choices yet, right? They may just be in middle school. But we find that one thing that many of them approach this topic with is the impression that copyright is something that is for the professionals, right? It's for movie studios or record labels or big stars. It has nothing to do with them, and it's not for them. And the part that is interesting to teach them and see their attitudes change is when we explain that actually they're already copyright holders. They may not even, they may not know it. They may not think of themselves as creators, but they're taking photos with their camera and they're putting it up on Instagram. They're creating YouTube videos. They actually are creators, and they own copyrights in those creations, even if they haven't registered them. And that is, I think, a revelation to a lot of them.
And I think that, the interesting thing, and I really do think that we're getting closer and closer to this, even through the work of, the organizations and the people participating in this conversation. It is, I long for the day and look forward to the day when you are in a creative session and, the creative juices are flowing and everybody's, adding on, and it is not a buzzkill. It does not kill the vibe when someone says, wait a minute, let's talk about how this is, let's talk about the intellectual property aspect of this, and let's talk about, splits and the implications of what we're doing. Because, a lot of times you see people don't necessarily want to have those conversations, but I do think like early education, integrating it into our creative curriculum, and the work of the organizations on this call today are pushing our communities to be able to stand ready and be comfortable with having those conversations earlier in the creative process.
Yeah, and I mean, to literally, like, I really feel like we're in the middle of a creative artistic renaissance. Like, it's not the awkward conversation anymore. To Kim's point, it's not the, oh my God, I don't want to talk about that, or what are you even talking about? Especially because of social media, the internet in general, it's brought up more. Here we are talking about IP, like these things are becoming more the norm, to have these conversations, to have these discussions. And it's starting with, I feel like, in the creative world as a whole, starting to make all of us feel a lot more comfortable and also more sociably approachable in our art form with one another.
Yeah, so Kik, you just mentioned we're in a creative renaissance here. One of those reasons got to be because of technology, right? The new type of technologies that are out there to help creators, but also new technologies that help those creators get their works out there, right? To let the world know of what they're creating. So, what can we do? How can being tech savvy help today's young people create new types of works? What role does understanding technology play in helping young creators protect their works, distribute their works? Obviously technology plays a big part in this creative renaissance you're talking about. So maybe you can talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think really what the big thing is, one, identifying what exactly is technology. We think it has to be something that's always digital, but it's a book. That's actually technology. Someone created that. That is an art form. That is tech. But again, we're now in that world where it's more social media, internet based. And the number one tool, and Addie touched on it, Google. Myself, when I was trying to understand things and figure out how does this work, how do I read this contract, I Googled things. It led me to from one link to another link. And I would read these forums with these entertainment lawyers and these music consultants and things like that. I mean, as far as visual creatives, I always recommend going to using platforms like Shutterstock or Getty Images, because they allow you to monetize your piece, not in the full extent, because you don't really get a back end royalty. It's more of a front end royalty. But at the end of the day, you're able to make some sort of revenue from that. And for myself, I use a lot of those platforms to license my music, but those platforms have also allowed me to be reached directly from brands and entities to say, hey, love your music, but I respect, I don't know much about this platform, but I'd like to work directly with you because I don't know if you're getting what you're owed because you're just amazing. So long story long, like I say, there are a lot of platforms out there within tech. There are apps, there's your devices that we talked about. There are things just all around you that you can use and utilize to really get out there and understand how do you protect your content, and just how do you also educate your peers on how to protect their content, because a lot of us don't realize you teaching someone else, that's a revenue stream. Learn to master that.
Anyone else want to join in? Otherwise, we'll move on.
And I just want to add that, so listen, there is a renaissance that's happening. It's so true. And it is, there's the promise and there's the problems with what we're seeing that's happening on a lot of these different platforms. We're seeing creators being able to reach and build communities in ways, free of gatekeepers and free of traditional impediments, to be able to build communities, right? Be it around their craft or services that they're trying to provide. But at the same time, we are participating with platforms that we don't necessarily know all of the rules. I mean, it is fascinating to me that, so many of us do not read the terms of service in platforms that we build complete business strategies around. and that we don't understand what we are giving away or signing away by participating, and ways to then reclaim our work and try to take control of it again. So, one of the things that, we have lots of conversations on are understanding the terms of service on all of these platforms and what it means to participate in different ambassador programs and, different ways to interact with these platforms. Because, it is a really beautiful and wonderful thing that's happening, but you really do have to understand the terms of engagement and, what in the benefits and some of the setbacks.
There's also one other piece I want to mention too, and I'm glad you mentioned terms and service, because a few years ago, I was like, I really want to read this because I feel like I need to read this, but I didn't, I mean, that's a lot of language. So I actually found a YouTube creator who reads the terms and service conditions of products and things and literally summarizes them to a T. And I thought that was so amazing. So as I think again to your question earlier, tech, YouTube University, freaking use it. It is amazing. I'm not gonna say all the facts are there. As they say, don't believe what you see on the internet or here, but utilize that to a T, because I do, it's helped me. And I do take things to a degree with a grain of salt, but I do keep in consideration that makes a lot of logical sense. Let me do my due diligence and research more about that, as well as ask my peers. And if I start to get the same aligning responses, I know I'm onto something.
Oh, I was just going to add, as far as new technology goes, like, we'd have to talk about NFTs as well too, because a lot of visual artists as well as others are trying to get into that arena. And, to Kim's point, talking about platforms and terms and conditions, those are still being written for a lot of these ever-changing platforms on for NFT sales and smart contracts. So that's something that we're tackling at Artists' Rights Society. A lot of our members are interested, and we are shepherding them through the process of, creating a very good smart contract for them. So, Addie had mentioned before about wanting to focus on her work and not looking on paper with all this text on it. And, again, that's what organizations like Artists' Rights Society are for. So you could focus on your work and let someone else deal with the issues of the paperwork.
Janet and Kik, you both referenced, and I wanted to make sure I got to this question at some point during the panel, you both got to start talking about like resources. In this case, ARS, where is there to help with the contracts. Kik, you mentioned this YouTube video that helps you understand the terms and conditions. There's got to be other resources out there, right? Will help you. I mean, I would hope everyone would come to the Copyright Alliance site if they needed to know about copyright. But there's got to be other resources, whether they're business resources or other things to help creatives, help artists out there kind of understand what their rights are, or maybe what their rights aren't as well. So I'm going to kind of throw it open to see who wants to suggest different resources that are out there that they have found good or useful in the past.
Resource action, we have this locally, which I feel like is now more respected and not as much underutilized, but still to a degree in other ecosystems and cities, is your local library. A lot of libraries were at the point where they were just kind of feeling like they were dying out and left behind. So they started finding innovative and creative ways to catch up and stay relevant. And like our local library has something called the maker space, where you can actually go there, print out flyers, decals that you want to put on your storefront or your window, or just make a mural of some sort. We have something they call I believe it's the Nespresso machine, which is literally not what you think it is. It is actually a book print and press machine that also publishes your work for you on your behalf. So you can literally write a book, upload the files to it. It does it by paperback, and then it also lets you choose which stores you want to distribute it to, and it would distribute it out there digitally. But it also gives you a bulk of physical copies. I don't know if other regions or cities have that, but again, libraries are really starting to catch up to the game. They're starting to innovate because they were built to be a resource, a free resource to the community. So I wanted to mention that because I still feel like to a degree they're still underutilized, but soon, not so much anymore.
All right. Any other business tools or resources people think are important for young creators out there?
I would say every last one of us on this panel. Right? I mean, I don't know. This is that's why I love this conversation. You know, I would, you know, the IIPSJ has a wonderful website. Take Creative Control. We have a great website that really does a really interesting way of connecting stories. And, you know, we have a storytelling series that connects the lived experience of creatives to policy solutions, to really give our creators the tool set to advocate on their own behalf with members of Congress or their local legislature. And then, you know, Copyright Alliance, even I've been blown away to watch even the Copyright Office. They've really been intentional about working on their toolkits for creators, for them to be able to understand and break down intellectual property issues and understanding their work. So, you know, there really are a number of fantastic resources out there.
One resource that we highlight in our materials for kids when they're looking to build their own creations and need to be taking some pieces of content that other people have done and integrating it into their own is Creative Commons. Creative Commons has a lot of stuff up on their website. If you're looking for something, you know, you're not in a position to license something, there's a lot up there that you're free to use and reuse and remix, and that's a great resource for young creators.
I think too, one last one I'll add is just creators going to other creators, especially with Instagram and social media, and creators having their own mini corner of the internet. A lot of them are eager to share how they got to where they are and what all they learned, and making it easier for other creators, and just joining in those circles and even asking them. I've DM'd some random artists on Instagram and they'll tell you anything pretty much. Just Google, YouTube too, like sounds silly, but you can really take advantage of it.
And just to add to Addie's point, which is a really important one, it's tremendous to watch how impactful it is when creators are kind of empowered to talk to other creators about these issues. Because, you know, listen, I am a lawyer in policy law by trade. I do not talk about these issues in a way that resonates with creatives. Creatives talk about these issues in a way that resonates with them. And so, you know, it is why, you know, it's so important to have and be able to work with people like Addie and Kik, who are creatives themselves, and be able to take that message into the community and just watch the ripples work through as each creator is empowered to advocate for their own work.
Excellent point. I also just want to associate with the comments you said about the Copyright Office, and I think you started to see this kind of change in what they were doing under Karen Temple, the former Register, and now under Cheryl Perlmutter, the Register. The steps they've been doing to not only educate, which they've always done, but do it in a way that really resonates, I think, with creators and others as well. I think they're doing a terrific job kind of in that space and providing different resources and whatever. So one group that may not be doing such a good job, though, is the school system. So I'm going to ask David and Kim and maybe Addie, if she wants to jump in. What do you think schools can do to help better educate their students about copyright and about protecting the works that they create? Assuming you agree with that they can be doing something more.
And I'll start. I think it just needs to be part of their digital citizenship education program. I mean, there's a number of things that schools need to be teaching about how kids can operate successfully in the digital environment. Obviously, they need to be protective of their privacy. There are cybersecurity issues. There's cyberbullying issues. All those things need to be coming up in the school system, and copyright really needs to be a part of it. You're interacting with so much content daily online. How do you do that in the right and responsible way? Needs to be just part of the program.
I think too, like everything David is doing and providing the teachers the materials they need, because I think sometimes, yeah, it'd be scary to teach something that they might not know. And sometimes we're, like, being digital natives, more familiar with wandering around, and they don't even know where we're going, I feel like sometimes. But I think, yeah, just from a young age, I remember we had PowerPoint class basically, and all of that. I think it should be, like what David said, just part of the curriculum. But in the same way, yeah, where to get your sources, where to cite, and in the same way, almost as like MLA is so built into every writing anything you do. I feel like copyright should be as well.
I feel like David put it perfectly. But I do think that the other piece of it is that we all need to shift our thinking as far as waiting for creators to end their formal training before they start creating. Like that is not the only path anymore, and that now creators are sharing their work, and that now we are able to, their audience, those of us that are consuming their creative works are able to watch them grow in their craft over time. But that it's not something that's happening somewhere in the distant future. No, we creatives now have the opportunity to share immediately and engage and build their community and their fellowships now. And so we need to be educating them earlier and earlier on their intellectual property rights and how to control and responsibly share and steward their crafts.
Yeah, something we've been doing at the Music Accelerator here in Cincinnati is working to partner more with like our public schools. For example, we're working with our School of Creative and Performing Arts to pretty much re-energize the teachers themselves in a sense of educating them a little more on the new age of just digital NFTs and things like that, because a lot of them we've learned are exhausted. You know, I'm a parent, kids can be exhausting. But that doesn't mean, you know, it's a bad thing. It's just like they only are able to grow as much as their mental capacity will allow them. And what we do is try to help them just understand this is why this is important. You know, you do what you do. This is how you make your living, but we really have to focus more on the youth. And that's why, again, every time I hear about what David's doing, it is amazing, because this is truly, truly critical and crucial to the advancement and development of our youth. You know, Addie, like, you are our future, you are our legacy, and we need to hone you at an early age. I'm glad you're here now, but it's truly important. So that's what we're trying to do here at the Music Accelerator, is find partners and work with our school systems, primarily our public school systems, to educate better and just how this intellectual protection works and why it's pretty critical and important.
All right. So up until this point, we've talked mostly about young creators. I'm going to shift for my penultimate question, I guess I'm going to ask you all, is what about young users, right? I mean, creators, if you're a young creator, you have some incentive to learn about copyright and know about copyright. But what about the young users that are out there that are listening to music and watching movies and film and television and playing video games and all this other stuff I mean, I can't remember who it was. Someone said, well, everyone's a creator, right? But everyone is certainly a creator at some level, but then there are people who are choosing a career in creativity. So there is a difference, and kind of getting people to respect that at a young age. I'm going to throw it out there, understanding maybe no one has a response to this, but how do we as a society, you know, educate those, not only young creators, but young users that are out there? So Kik, it looked like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, so we actually had an interesting case come up where we had one of our mentees to our organization wanting to do something really nice for the community that he lived in. And that thing was, he wanted to have a movie night in the general public. And I had to be the one to say, let's talk about this a little bit. So we talked it through, educated his parents, because again, I work in sync licensing, and explaining that to them wasn't difficult, because I've actually been in that predicament where I wanted to do something similar. And I walked them through it. And at first it was very frustrating, but once I articulated as well as brought in some resources and help to say, this is why you can't just publicly play, and I'm just going to throw a movie out. This was the movie, The Avengers, of course, my background, just The Avengers. You can't just publicly play that out there. There's a certain process you have to go through, especially if, you're doing a fundraiser, which is it's a little better. You get a little more leniency, but you're selling popcorn, you're trying to advertise it to the mass public. You're not a movie theater. You don't have those rights to showcase things out there. And I think they at one point wanted to sell tickets. So long story long, it's really important to educate the users. I'm one of those that is a user. I make music and create it, but I do want cover art, and I don't always want to be the one to create it. So sometimes I work with a photographer or a visual artist to create something for this, and we actually, this is my way of training with them more than me. We do, right of usage, things like that, and so not. So they get it, but it's very important that we educate the users on how to respect the creators, because if the users cannot respect the creators, that's just going to cause a rift we just do not want. And then once the user gets to a point, they're now the creative, you're going to be like, well, you didn't respect it here, why should I respect it now?
That's a good point.
And I think that there needs to be a shift. It's almost, building on what Kick is talking about. It's this education in consumers of what does it look like if we take a more active role as not only consumers, but also caretakers of our great creators. How do we participate in a more active way, in targeted way of supporting the creativity that we love and the creativity that we love to consume? And so what does that look like? What does a more reciprocal relationship look like, where it's not just us consuming, but it's us also supporting? And so that needs to be, and that goes hand in hand with the understanding of intellectual property and the rights that the creative have and the rights that we have to respect as consumers of that creativity. So just having those conversations earlier on as well. And we really are seeing a shift where consumers are ready to have those conversations as well. There's an appetite for that discussion. So, and it's very timely, and this too can be powered by tech and the promise of how we interact with all of these different platforms. And so, the earlier we have these conversations, I think would be better for just the creative ecosystem as a whole.
All right. Oh, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'll just add, in our program, we really try to emphasize early on in the program that we all have multiple roles. Sometimes we're consumers, sometimes we're creators. We're doing both of those things online. We both we all play both of those roles. And so our theory is really that if we can get kids to realize that they're on really both sides of the equation, not just one side, and then understand a little bit what the purpose of copyright is and why it has, what the rationale behind it is, that should inform their behavior as consumers in the long run.
Yeah, and to also piggyback a little more is something I do remember now. It was like, right, I remember this subject coming up when all these Black Lives Matter murals were being made in the streets in front of city halls and places like that. There had all these individuals who were taking photos using drones and things like that. And the big question started to come up: who owns the rights to this artwork, these pieces, this photo, each letter? Here in Cincinnati, we have various artists actually, designated to design each letter. And then that was a big argument here locally was, well, I created this, you're using this in a photo, I'm not okay with that where others were. And I remember that big rift where here locally, we got it figured out. And we actually turned that into an entire book, the making of Cincinnati's Black Lives Matter mural that has all the pictures, highlights all the individuals, the funders, the creatives that participated. But I remember that being a huge roundtable discussion of just who owns this work.
I heard a lot of good things there. I heard support, I heard respect, I heard understanding, and I heard discussion. Those are all important elements, I think, for people to get a better idea of what creators are going through and users, et cetera. So All right, so we're running up against the clock here, so I'm going to ask you all the one last question, sort of like a speed dating type question, in 30 seconds or so, whether what is the best single, I know this will be hard, but single piece of advice that you could offer a young creator who is just starting out? Who wants to jump in first?
I'll start. I think that, well, it's two-pronged, but know your value, know your worth. And you do that through education, and you do that through a good community base. So by talking to other fellow artists and knowing what your rights are, to know your value, I think it's a fundamental in understanding not only how you should be using copyright, but how you should be protecting your own.
I'll add something that I would have told maybe my sophomore, junior year self, or even honestly now, to just, if whenever there's something that I'm confused on, honestly, just leaning into it and figuring out, connecting, asking questions rather than running away from it. And you'll end up much farther than having it in the back of your mind for a while.
I would add to that just by telling anyone in the creative world struggling or trying to advance. And I'll try to say this in one way because it is difficult, but no piece is a bad piece. As they say, art is in the eyes of the beholder. It's applied to sound as well. It just depends on the listener and the viewer.
That you're not alone in navigating these issues. The way that we now engage virtually and we create virtually, we can often feel like it is something that we're doing on our own and solo. And so just to constantly remind our community, our creative community, that they are not alone in navigating these issues, and that there's just so many resources out there looking to support them would be my advice.
And I guess I'd add just that on the specific topic of copyright, learning how to navigate copyright is something that you're going to probably need to do, and you should think of it as just it's an important skill in your creative toolkit, just like being adept with the technology might be.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. I want to thank, a huge thanks to all our panelists for sharing their wisdom, your experience in honor of World IP Day 2022. And a huge thanks to everyone who listened in and watched today. I don't know about you. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion as much as I did. I really did. I thought it was fantastic, and the panelists were fantastic. So thank you very much. And everyone, enjoy the rest of your World IP Day and World IP Week. Thank you very much for joining in once again. Thank you, panelists.